Hi, my name is Ashley. I currently live in Salt Lake City. I've been here for 2 months, but before I moved here, I lived in New York City for nearly 5 years. I moved to Salt Lake City because I got a job at University of Utah Health.
My name is Cheryl Cawthorn, and I live in Fort Lauderdale. The reason why I decided to move there was because being from New England, I really love climate.
I'm Susanna. I'm Emily's stepsister. After college, I moved to New York City and I lived in Brooklyn and Queens and Manhattan. Total, I was there for about 5 years. I actually moved back to Schenectady about 4 years ago. And the reason I moved back was just I had lived in New York for about 5 years and I wasn't really doing the things that I wanted to be doing when I was there, and kind of came back to sort of like be home and regroup and figure out my next step was, which I've been doing for all of this time.
My name is William Doyle. I live in New York City.
I'm here with my brother, Zachary Gassenheimer. He is 20, and he is a musician.
Right now I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I moved here to go to school. I go to Vanderbilt University.
What would you say is the most advantageous aspect of living in a city?
The food, the diversity of food. There's a never-ending array of food from all different cultures, and I love that.
It's nice living in a large city because a lot of our work is doing freelancing gigs, and the bigger the city is, the more opportunity you have.
As a person who doesn't love driving, the accessibility to transportation, especially in a city like New York City, is amazing. I remember my commute being really long to get, but during that time I was able to really use my time on the subway to like read and listen to podcasts and journal and do a lot of stuff like that. So it was always productive.
It's the fact that I don't have to travel far to do something or get something I need.
And I would say the most advantageous thing about living in a city is there's always something to do.
Worst part. Probably public transit's the worst. Salt Lake City, though, the worst aspect of Salt Lake City is everything shuts down at like 1 and everything is closed down on Sundays here.
The people.
It's a disadvantage. It's quite hectic living in the city. You know, it's busy, lots of traffic, lots of people, and it does get overwhelming sometimes.
Is definitely the cost of living.
The most disadvantageous aspect would definitely be the traffic. Because of all of the good reasons to live in Fort Lauderdale, lots of people want to live here, and so we're all in each other's way.
So if you or others could change something about city life, what would you say would be your priority to change it?
One thing I would love to change about Fort Lauderdale, as I already mentioned earlier, is the traffic. It's a huge hassle. There are not a lot of options for mass transportation here. For example, something like a subway.
I would change the people's attitudes and make them more respectful, nicer, especially when they're in a confined area like a subway.
The rent, people being really nasty to each other. No one's really hospitable in the city. Usually everyone's like pretty mean in the morning. Public transit, because the subway's always shutting down.
Improve the cost of living situation. You know, people aren't being priced out of their own homes.
One of my biggest pet peeves about city life is traffic. There's lots and lots of traffic, and I think it'd be really great if there were people that could enhance traffic flow and speed it up.
You've lived in the country/suburbs, so do you prefer that to city life, and why or why not?
Well, actually, this summer I spent 3 months in Aspen, Colorado, which is a tiny town. I really enjoyed the fast-pacedness of living in the city and always going. Living in the mountains was wasn't the best for me.
I do like suburbs, but I like being close to a city just because there's a lot going on, being around all of that. So I like both aspects.
No, because despite the suburbs being nice, I feel like it'd get boring fast.
For me, the convenience of having things close by, access to a lot of arts and culture is really advantageous. A human, I think it's really important if you are living in the city to get out every once in a while and go and find some place that's green, because if you live in a place without nature, then it's just like it's really detrimental to your health overall.
I prefer the urban environment because I like having something to do all the time.
So, do you find it easy or difficult to travel around in the city?
I definitely find it easier. I remember days where it would be like, oh, I guess I'm going to be stuck on the F train for 4 hours. And it's like a thing that you live with, but it's so much more affordable to be able to take public transportation than it is to have to drive a car. I kind of discovered that the buses in the city were pretty magical because a lot of people avoid taking buses in New York.
I find it relatively easy to travel around Fort Lauderdale where I need to go, and my main mode of transportation is definitely my personal car.
Salt Lake City, it's really easy to get around because it's small and everything's close together, so it's actually really, really easy to get around the city. In Salt Lake City, I use the bus.
I find it extremely easy. Subway.
I mean, I've been here for 3 years now, and the first 2 years I was here, I didn't have a car, so it was actually kind of difficult to get around. But ride sharing is pretty nice here. There's lots of available Ubers and Lyfts.
What is your opinion on having a family in the city?
I think it's not a good idea because the cost of living is extremely expensive.
I would never have a family in the city. I want my kids to have a yard, have like green space. It stresses me out just being a single woman living there. I can't imagine having a family there.
For me, the most important thing about raising a family is making sure that wherever you raise them is the place that you work, so you can provide income for your family and be there to support them emotionally and be around as they're growing up.
I would say if you wanted to have a family in a city, you would definitely need to be cautious because the school systems in this area are not optimal.
But I don't know. I think that there's like a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with your kids if you're living in a big city.
Have you ever experienced weather or pollution problems?
I have. Well, there's a Hasidic matzah factory that burns coal, and the smoke gets everywhere on like my street. And so for like 17 years, it like on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, it would just like smell really bad.
In Nashville, it rains a lot. And when it rains, it's pretty hard to get around. Traffic patterns get bad. People drive very poorly. It's a little dangerous.
My coworkers have been complaining about the air quality here because they feel like sometimes like they can't breathe because, we're just in a valley.
Hurricanes.
Noise and light pollution can have a huge effect on people in general, and you definitely tell that. Like, if you've ever been in the city during a blackout and you can suddenly see stars, it's really interesting. Like the way that people act.
You live on top of a sewer in New York City.
Where do you see yourself living long term?
Long term, I'd like to see myself living kind of wherever I can find work. But if I got to pick, it would definitely be somewhere with a more tropical climate and a bigger city where there's a lot of people, a lot going on, lots of culture, lots of performance opportunity.
Probably going to move to the South one day. That's ideally where I'd like to be because my parents are retiring to Florida.
In the city, because there's a lot of opportunities there, and I'm already used to it.
I guess I always imagined myself moving back to New York City, when I win the lottery or inherit a lot of money. But I love the idea of being able to have somewhere quiet and, green and lush to get away to.
Long term, I see myself living right where I'm at. I love the city. This is where my job is, and this is where I'm going to stay.